Good afternoon. Just want to give a warm welcome to everyone. We are going to start our webinar soon, but once again, from Momenta and on behalf of Ken Blanchard Singapore, we want to invite you. We're going to watch one more video just to let the last people come in, and then we will get on to our content. So one more video, and then we'll start. So let's see our last video, and then we'll get on to the webinar. Or no, maybe we won't. Maybe we'll just go straight in. Oh, there it is.
Coming back home's like walking in on a secret that everyone older than me knows.
My first boss was this guy called Ed Davis. He basically tells me, well, you have a great attitude, you have great enthusiasm, but you don't have the skills. I'm going to teach you and show you the ways on becoming a professional chef.
Situational Leadership 2 is based on the 4 development levels that we all progress through when we master a new task. In Roy's story, he was at development level 1, enthusiastic and ready to tackle new tasks without a clue how to begin. Roy's leader gave him what he needed, just clear direction to develop his skills as a chef.
We definitely had a moment when we realized we were completely overwhelmed with the knowledge of understanding what to do but not knowing how to take it on ourselves. We understood that we were a small and growing business, and having that knowledge, we knew that we needed to kind of bring someone else on board to help us. And it was the perfect time. We met our first manager, Rebecca, in that moment.
Hannah and Maggie were at development level 2 and felt more confused than competent. Their new manager brought the right combination of direction and support and got them back in the spotlight.
In 2010, I tore my Achilles tendon skiing, and I had surgery, rehabbed super hard all summer, and by the following winter, I was physically stronger than I'd ever been. But the mental component was missing. I just didn't have the confidence that I could do it because of that injury in the back of my mind.
With awesome skills but low confidence after her injury, Ingrid was at development level 3. Her mentor matched her with just the right amount of support to fuel her comeback. And for high performers at the top of their game at D4, just a little direction and support is all they need. What do these peak performers have in common? They didn't do it alone. They had mentors and leaders who helped them when they needed it. Situational Leadership 2, or SL2, shows leaders how to diagnose what their people need and match those needs with the right amount of direction and support. How great would it feel to get just what you need just when you need it?
Thank you for that, Denise. But once again, I want to extend a very warm welcome to everyone here who has joined our call. We know that there are people here from Singapore and other countries. So again, welcome, welcome. My name is Derek Ma, and I am the managing partner for Ken Blanchard Singapore on behalf of Momenta. And it is my honor to introduce our speaker today. His name is Carl, and he'll be speaking on leading virtually for good. So Carl is a leading expert in learning and development with 30 years in consulting. He's completed 100 consulting assignments and facilitated over 1,500 workshops on strategy, leadership, marketing, and sales development. As a serial entrepreneur, Carl founded the Sunstone Group, a holding company that owns businesses in technology, consumer products, healthcare, business process outsourcing, mining, financial services, real estate, hospitality, education, and management consulting. So Carl's involved in a lot of different things. The group is headquartered in Singapore, but also has offices in 7 different countries. Carl himself has an inextinguishable passion to help organizations perform through enhancing the capabilities of their people. He's got deep insight into the inner workings of various industries, including financial services, healthcare, life sciences, biotechnology, as well as fast-moving consumer goods. Carl is also engaged as a strategy consultant by various MNCs, NGOs, and government organizations to drive innovation and strategic leadership. Carl also personally engages his own time and sits on several NGO boards, including Church World Service, Family First Global, and he serves as a synod member of the Anglican Diocese of Singapore. Carl's also been the driving force of personally shifting the whole of Momenta into virtual modalities. He's very passionate about this. So I don't want to take any more of his time, but I love to welcome Carl to take over and start his webinar. Thanks, Carl.
Derek, thank you very much. Derek, a sound check. Can you hear me clearly?
All good, Carl.
Great, thank you. All that introduction basically means one thing. I'm an old guy. So thank you very much, everyone. I think I'd like to chunk this up. I've got some friends here who's shown up. Good afternoon, dear friends. And for those who I don't know personally yet, I look forward to getting to know you better. So I think there's maybe three chunks of this conversation that I'd like to break in. The first is to share some statistics that I felt is good to set the context of where we are. And the second is I'll give you some tips that I've personally picked up over many years about leading virtually. I've been leading virtually for about 10 years now, with offices in Malaysia, in Japan, as well as in the US. So, in a way, nobody's really ready for COVID, but in a way, I was better prepared because I already had a certain kind of rhythm there. So I'll share some tips. So the first chunk is some statistics. It's really to set the context and to encourage some thinking. And I think my statistics will not be a surprise to anybody here. The second chunk is where I share some tips, ideas. And the third part is Q&A. I would love for this to be more interactive. If you have questions, comments, I would appreciate if you can wait until I finish my second part and feel free to ask. Let's engage in a healthy dialogue. I have strong opinions on many things, but it doesn't mean that I'm right, okay? So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Now, I know that we're Singapore-based, so some of the statistics I'm going to share are based out of the Singapore context, but I think given COVID is a global issue now and the fact that we're all working from home at some degree or another, I think this is fair to say that we will have opportunities to learn from everyone. Okay, so leading virtually. Let me just jump right into the first part of this webinar. This is very, very fresh. As you guys can see, this is very, very fresh. 4 out of 10 Singapore workers would give up a bigger bonus for remote working. Now, I mean, for those who are from Singapore and for those who know Singaporeans, this is a big deal, right? 40% of workers would give up money in order to be able to work remotely. I guess people had the exposure. Singapore and Asia in general is a little bit behind the curve. In North America, which I spent many years, about almost 10 years working, work from home and remote working was already quite well commonly practiced even pre-COVID. And the question is, why is that? A third of Singaporeans feel more productive working from home. I think you guys can debate this, all right? Some people prefer it, some people don't prefer it. Just in the past, this week, I had a lady that I was on a Zoom call with, and she's fully dressed in the office, and she was so excited in Malaysia to go back to work in the office because she said, I have already felt like an auntie in the past 2 years. I enjoy getting dressed up. So I think it's for different people, but I think the reality is the two things here. The reality is more and more people are willing to sacrifice financial gains in order to have the flexibility, and more people feel that having the working from home arrangement allows them to be more productive. Two very important points that points us in a very clear trajectory. The world is no longer, as you all know, going to be operating in the same way. I actually think instead of it being a detriment, or rather thinking I don't like this way, I think there's an opportunity. As a business person, I would encourage all of us to think this is an opportunity. Well, work from home remote statistics, I think it's very clear. I'm not going to spend too much time here. This is partly due to government regulations. 50% was working from home. And that's partly because the government regulations dictate so. And if you ask people and go just one step deeper, why do you prefer to work from home, right? Universally, this is not just Singapore, but this is global. Flexible work hours equals increased productivity. I was in Malaysia just the last 2 or 3 days, and my team members who is working from home usually, unless I'm there, they actually said the traffic, it takes about 2 hours going back and forth to the office. I think in Singapore, that's less of an issue, but I grew up in Jakarta and I know traffic is a nightmare. So if you look at this, you can see right now, less time commuting, flexibility, this translates to more work hours, and technology has made it possible. Technology has made it possible. And one of the biggest issues with meetings, with working in the office is meetings tends to take up a lot of your time. I know that's still the case right now for many of you, even though it's remote working, but all these things add up to quite a powerful argument to say, let's allow a flexibility of working from home. So from a personal basis, my office in Singapore used to be very reasonably large. We even had our own classrooms. I've actually, because of COVID, I've actually now, as a personal testimony, I guess, used a service office. That's what I've done. My team members initially was very upset. I'm able to save a couple $100,000 in expenses over a 2-3 year period. And I've then allowed everybody to come and meet on Mondays, if we're allowed to meet on Mondays in person, and we buy lunch for everyone. And that's really worked out. So that's a little bit of a hybrid working model. I'll go back to my slide presentation and jump right into what I believe is an opportunity and what are some of the best practices. There you go. So we all know this. I think this goes without saying, right? This is, 80% of firms, I would say 100% of firms are going to come up to this reality. Although I think this may vary from industry to industry. Some people who work in the F&B business, food and beverage business, may actually need to be on site, right? So there you have it. So the topic for today is leading virtually, virtual leadership. How do I become a more effective virtual leader? I think the key word I like to anchor our discussion is around this word effective rather than virtual, okay? Effective rather than virtual. The reason is because I think all of us can be virtual. We're all using WhatsApp, we all use Zoom, we all use many different things, right? But how do I be effective? So these are 7 tips I've picked along the way. Naturally, there are some things that I think that are instinctive, but I don't think it's good to think about being instinctive. I think it's good to be thinking of intentionality rather than instinctive. I believe in order to improve myself, it's not doing things better automatically. I think it's about doing things systematically. So let me show you the first tip. First tip is, if you are able to, adopt a hybrid operating model. The word is operating rhythm, means what is my weekly routine? What is my daily routine? What is my monthly routine? So for my company and all my different other organizations that I have the privilege of participating in some cases leading, we operate on a weekly rhythm. A weekly rhythm. We have 1-hour meetings where the team collectively comes in. Prior to the meetings, everybody writes into our group chat message. We use Slack. There's MS Teams, I think, and there's a couple other, and some people use WhatsApp, some chat groups, but we use Slack, SLACK. Everybody prior to the meeting puts their top 5 things they're focusing on for that week. We put our meetings at 10 a.m. because at 9 a.m. everybody's still rushing to the office, trying to get themselves sorted out. My wife sends the kids to the school. So there's different things. So we put it at 10 a.m. On Mondays in our case. And then we hold our group virtual meetings. During the group virtual meetings, we also immediately, within a few minutes, are able to establish who do we need to collaborate with, on a virtual basis. Of course, now we're able to come back group in-person meetings. We do this one time a week, at least on our site. We find it to be extremely effective. That water cooler chat opportunity doesn't happen when you work remotely, doesn't happen when you work virtually. But the water cooler chat, the informal chit chat, that catch up develops emotional engagement and relational capacity. And we feel that's very important. Fortunately, with Singapore, I know it's different in different countries, and we have audience participants from different countries today for this workshop. But fortunately, in Singapore, we have the privilege now of catching up over breakfast, coffee, lunch, or dinner. I always say to my team members, you have to eat lunch anyway. Why not eat lunch with some colleagues? Correct. Or with some clients for that matter. So establishing a hybrid operating rhythm is a very important part of this initiative. The little tip here is this one right here. If you get people to say, all right, these are the top 5 things that I'm going to be working on this week, and we request everyone to see it, that prompts a very effective communication where people make mental notes and say, I need to catch up with Derek, I need to catch up with Kevin, and so on and so forth. So that's the first tip. The second, so there's no rocket science there. And when you can, and we will highly encourage if you can still operate in a hybrid way where you can try to meet people in person. I have 2 companies in the United States. During COVID, it was very, very painful. Once travel was allowed, even though it was quarantine, I quickly made my trip there. I tried to meet them at least once every 5 to 6 months, just to keep that personal relationship going. Just like you would imagine, building a relationship virtually with people that work with you and work for you would be very tough. You still need that dinner, you still need that personal catch-up. So that's the first recommendation. The second recommendation is another obvious one. Everybody here, I believe, already use this. You use different types of chat tools. We all use WhatsApp in Singapore. I think the last statistics was like 98% of Singaporeans use WhatsApp. We use as a company Slack. I have my other team members use Atlassian, Office 365. These are asynchronous. And this is very important. Asynchronous engagement. What that basically means is you text people, they will respond to you when they can and when they want to, right? One thing that I try to be very mindful of is right here. For me, at least, I try to use Slack strictly for business. And if it's WhatsApp, it's strictly for personal. I think making that distinction gives me a little bit of a peace of mind and a bit of segregation because I know what you're going to ask. The question is, well, how do we separate work from personal time? So I think the technology tools will allow us a little bit of segregation there. I just met with another well-established businessman. He's starting to use Telegram for his family chats. And then he used WhatsApp for his business chats. So there's different sense of urgency. I think a very important point, and I've been making this at least with my team, is you need to think about the asynchronous engagement. What are information sharing? What are discussions? And what are debates? What do I mean by that? If you have a lot of information to share, a chat may not be effective. You may want to consider using an email. But a chat like Slack is perfect for giving people updates, for discussions that don't require a Zoom call or a Google Meet call or a WebEx call. And a debate, especially if it's quite sensitive, my rule of thumb is try not to do it. If you can avoid it, try not to do it over email, try not to do it over Slack, but do it on a virtual format such as Zoom, or ideally in person, right? Because you don't want to get things, I think things that are emotionally charged or has the potential to be emotionally charged. I think you want to think about the right channels for that. That's what I mean by time, place, and situation appropriateness. So a quick recap. The first is all about hybrid rhythm. What's your operating rhythm? And doing some pre-work before you engage in team meetings. The second is use the technology tools that's available, asynchronous engagement, where WhatsApp has completely replaced, phone calls, right? And I think I don't have to go too much into that. The third topic for discussion is what I call digital relational intelligence. Fancy word. Guys, fancy word. And you know what I just did? I just unshared my screen. Why am I unsharing my screen? Because there are times where maybe you guys seeing me, not just hearing me, is more important than what the slide is. Have a little bit of, not EQ, but I call it digital relational intelligence. So what I'm going to do is this, and by the way, I'm going to share my screen now, so just be prepared for that. You see what I just did? I tell you what I'm going to do, and I verbalize it. And when I can, I use my hand gestures to verbalize it. By the way, everyone, I'll be sharing my screen now, so just bear with me. That sets expectations of the people you're having dialogue with. That is small examples of digital relational intelligence. I also want to impress upon you that maybe, perhaps, it does make sense to update your LinkedIn profiles, right? Or be aware of what's on your Facebook, because people may start to want to know more about you, and you should be very mindful of what I call your digital footprint, right? Digital footprint. This is very important. What is your digital footprint? Some people say, I don't have a digital footprint. Guess what? If you give somebody enough time, they'll be able to Google and find out something about you. So just be aware. Is your LinkedIn updated? Hopefully you don't have too many photos on your Facebook where you're, drinking in a party with wild music in the background, right? Let's just be very mindful of that. I also think digital relational intelligence is also putting ourselves in a posture of, okay, what does the other party need from me? What does the other party want from me? That's what I call an outward mindset. Having the right mindset. That's important in digital relational intelligence. What we also did is, how do I build relations digitally? Where for our company staff, we send care packages and to our staff, and we send appreciation packages to our key clients. Nothing fancy. Maybe it's perhaps a bottle of wine that you send through a delivery, or you can personally send it, with all the masks on. With our team in Malaysia, we send them care packages where we provide extra mask, extra hand sanitizers, perhaps aspirin. So these are what I call relational building activities. You must be aware that not everybody's on the same mood as you, and I think you should be able to sense when people are getting frustrated, getting angry. You can tell by the tone of their writing. You can by the tone of their writing in Slack or email. I think we should have a heightened alert on that. And sometimes during company meetings virtually, if people are choosing not to turn on their videos, perhaps don't confront them in public. Perhaps they've had a difficult day or a bad hair day. Correct. be a bit sensitive about these issues. You should have a better sense, perhaps, or a little bit of sensitivity. And this is something that I've made mistakes on mental health and stress. So I think also another thing that I hope that I'm able to express at least with the team members that's with me, express your personal values digitally. For me, being disciplined, being responsive is an important part of who I am. So therefore, I can say some of my colleagues like Kevin here and even my friend Mason, that when they WhatsApp me, as much as possible, I try to be respectful and responsive, not because I'm trying to do everything at a time, but I'm trying to express how I conduct myself digitally. I'm trying to express my personal values digitally. That's what I mean by digital relational intelligence. All right. The fourth tip is a good tip. Over communicate. Again, I'm talking about video on or off. Some of you right now have their videos off. Perfectly fine, because the situation, the time, and the place is fully appropriate. That your video is off because you're listening to a webinar, right? But if you're having a one-on-one Zoom conversation with somebody else, maybe the video is on. What's your background? Your background communicates. If you take a look at my background, which is, my background is with my company's logo. And if you look at my reactions, take a look at my reactions, right? You can see the thumbs up, or you can see my reactions to be a clap. You can see that my company logo is not on the top left side, but on the right side. You have to think about being sensitive, that you don't want the top, all that to be covering your logo. These are just small things that I feel that makes a big difference in how you want to communicate. I'll share a little bit more details on communications here, right? I tend to find bite-sized messages to be better instead of long essays, particularly on emails now. Over communicate doesn't mean longer writing. It means more succinct and articulate writing. I tend to find bullet points forces me to think, all right, what is the key points that I want to cover rather than paragraphs? I'm telling you right now, it's my personal preference. And maybe some people would disagree. I welcome the discussion. A very sensitive topic with colleagues and even more with clients. And I'm actually in the process of raising capital for our fintech in the US. Is it a call of follow-up? Or am I starting to pester you? Or am I getting a little bit annoying? Right? So I think, in my opinion, you just got to be extra sensitive to that. What is your follow-up rhythm versus pestering rhythm, especially with your colleagues, because you're not going to be able to see them around the office. You can't walk to their desk and say, by the way, Jim, where's that report that you promised me? That really is going to be a little bit more contained, and you're limited through written communications, right? Mask versus no mask, I think everybody's got a debate there. Athleisure wear versus business attire. All these will communicate your values. I have a staff, by the way, and I love him dearly. But every time I see him on Zoom, he's got 2 masks. He's a double masker, right? He's a double masker. Of course, we don't make fun of him, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we are encouraging him to say, hey, if you're at home and you're by yourself in your room, maybe, unmasking would be good. But I don't take that in a public discussion. I take it offline with him. Over communications, because as you all know, when you communicate in person and you have your team in the same location, your team members are able to see your body language. But leading virtually, body language is less pronounced. So that's why you can see sometimes I'm using my hands to communicate the first point and the second point. the first point and the second point, because I want to exaggerate some of my body language so that I can try to make up for the lack of that in-person visual cues that you would get. All right, and of course, athleisure wear and business attire. I won't communicate too much about this. I want to give one example. One of our clients is a bank executive. She's been working from home, as all of us has been, for about a year now. Every time I have a Zoom or a WebEx call with her, she's in full business attire, even though she's at home. That demonstrates to me her values. That communicates to me that she's professional. She's got her lighting right. She doesn't have a very fancy background. And I can't help but comment on her that her professionalism and her values are expressed, and she's communicating a very important message, which is, I'm the vendor, by the way. She's saying, you're important to me. I want to take time to meet you the way I would actually in person, but circumstances doesn't allow me to, or out of convenience, I'm able to do this through Zoom, but I still respect you. So for me, that was quite powerful. All right. So that is the fourth tip. The fifth tip is PowerPoint Plus. I call this PowerPoint Plus is because I think the ability to use your PowerPoint as your whiteboard is an important skill set. The ability to use your PowerPoint as a whiteboard is an important skill set. Right? The PowerPoint can be a flip chart. You should be able to be in a position, right, to be able to kind of perhaps take some notes as we are discussing here. Right? So what that does is use this as your digital flip chart. Annotation functions in Zoom and in WebEx and are not as good as using PowerPoint as your flip chart. So naturally, you don't want to be doing this in a slide view. You want to be able to do it in edit view. Learn how to share images, learn how to share files. Try to appreciate that many people communicate through mobile phones. Why is that important? Effective versus efficient. If you're going to be, if you know your counterparty is outside and working and using their WhatsApp or their Slack, maybe what you want to do is you want to cut and send an image of the slide deck, that one page that's important, instead of sending the whole deck on WhatsApp or email. Guys, let me just repeat that. Think about this as the efficiency point of view versus effectiveness point of view. Why would you send somebody a 15-page PowerPoint and say, check out page 3, when a lot of us are working using mobile phones? Have the empathy to say, you know what, out of the 15 pages, there's only 2 pages. My colleague just did that for me. Take a look at this. And I look at the image. That was what we need to communicate effectively instead of a total slide deck, right? People, as you guys know, the attention span is very short and it gets shorter as we move into the digital age. So these are some practical tips that has worked for me. But what I'm trying to impress upon you is do take the time to learn perhaps how to use PowerPoint to its fullest. The sixth step, and we're down to the last 2, is, do I lead or do I manage? Do I lead or do I manage? I'm not going to give a lecture on leadership versus being a leader versus a manager, but these are a lot of words. I will let you guys decide which activities are leading activities or what I call leadership competencies, which are more manager or management competencies, right? Think about this. Take a look at this. And then create in your own mind a matrix. Which one is more suitable to do? Online versus offline. Think about the efficiency versus effectiveness. Okay, having said that, to be honest, 1 year ago in India, one of our clients, which is a very large bank, they had no choice. They needed to do a strategy workshop for the next year with a forecast and a budget. And of course, India a year ago, needless to say, having in-person meetings was completely not possible. So we had no choice. But what I'm talking about is as the world starts to become what I think Lee Hsien Loong, our Prime Minister, said yesterday, to the new normal, let's define that new normal in a way that's advantageous for effectiveness, not just for efficiency, right? So think about that as a dynamic, which are appropriate for online and offline. And lastly is leading virtually connotates that I should have leadership capacity, leadership skills, and I'm leading people, either as an individual contributor leading a project or leading a function, or as somebody, a line manager with people that's reporting to me. Fundamentally, there's two types of leadership styles, right? The first is directive. Let me tell you what I think you need to be doing. The second is supportive. So how do you think I can help you? Directive. Let me tell you what I think you need to focus on this week. Let me show you what you need to do in order to make this product good or this project right. Supportive means if you had 2 hours of my time this week, what would be the best way that you can leverage my availability? Two different styles. The big question is, which one should I use? Which is more effective? That's the big question. The big question is, so how? What should I do? What is the best way? So I would like to suggest that it depends. Like one of my mentors many years ago, the best consultants always learn these first two words. It depends, right? Well, it depends. But first, let's understand what is directive versus supportive. Directive is about, getting the goals locked in, perhaps clarifying roles, identifying priorities, showing and telling how to do it, and agreeing on deadlines. Supportive is a little bit more what we call coaching approach, listening, right? Providing rationale, encouraging, and maybe facilitating the person to uncover ways of going about solving the same thing. So the question is, when should we use what? Well, that's a big topic. I did put in here a logo. This is a program that we're running called SL2, Situational Leadership 2, SL2, from the Ken Blanchard Leadership School. And we would invite you to come and understand, when should I be directive? When should I be supportive? And how does that work from a virtual point of view, right? What are the dynamics around that? All right, I think I've just got one more slide and I will take some questions. I'd love to know more about each one of you. This is my LinkedIn. I'm hoping if you have your mobile phones, I'd love to be able to connect through LinkedIn with you guys. So please feel free to take this. If not, do a print, save this print screen, right? I also want to just quickly share our organization has a couple programs that's coming out soon that we're very excited about. This is my little sales pitch, guys, so bear with me. This first one on the left side is conversational capacity, which is basically, here's the QR code. And the date is right here. Let me just do this. I don't find myself being effective right now. So let me just take this out and I will just point it using an arrow. So the date for conversational capacity is April the 13th. It's a one-day program and it focuses on how do I have productive conversations, even though they could be tension-based, even though they could be focused on things that requires, sensitive topics. How do I stretch that boundary, right? That's conversational capacity. How do I be more effective? It's done virtually. And the second program is on April the 14th, which is an extension of this little webinar here that we would like to encourage you to see if that's something that you want to participate. We also have, coming back to this question, when should we be supportive or directive? This is the workshop that we have. It's our SL2 workshop. It's a 2-day program. Sorry, and the dates are right here. May the 12th and the 13th. And I'm going to make this a little bit bigger as you guys take a look at this. And I invite Derek, my managing partner, to facilitate the Q&A.
Great, thank you for that, Carl. Again, if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. We're a small bunch, or you can just drop it in the chat. And again, we can give you all of these dates and links later. But again, I want to say thank you, Carl. Carl, I have a question for you that I was wondering. Why is this such a big deal to care about this stuff? Is this just a fad? Once COVID is over, we'll go back to face-to-face and we'll be done with all this virtual stuff. What's your response to that?
I don't think it's optional anymore, Derek. First of all, we're very grateful we're coming out from COVID-19. I think the world's a little bit better prepared. I don't think it's optional. I think the pandemic has caused us to reconsider what the work life is. And I think there's an opportunity. How do I lead virtually means that if I'm able to get resources from Malaysia, Philippines, Japan, India, Mexico, the best people in different geographies to work on a project, why would I be limited to my recruitment strategy for just being in Singapore? That's right. Moving virtually is an exciting way to look at finding more favorable commercial terms, cheaper resources in other markets, and leveraging that opportunity.
Yeah. Again, want to invite anyone if they want to drop a question in the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself. I also have more. Sorry, Carl, I have lots of questions. Good. When you move kind of towards more virtual modalities and for meetings, surely there's going to be some staff who are very against it or kind of drag their feet or just can't get the kind of virtual meeting. How do you handle that as the kind of group managing director? How do you kind of get everybody onto the same page?
I think it's about sensitivity, being more sensitive. We've had, even in our small organization, people that's pushed back and said, no, we need an office space. And so I had to sit down with them over lunch, over coffee, and say, okay, let's discuss this. What do we do in the office? What requires physical face-to-face? What is our office for? And you know what, Derek, at least in our organization, I found out that people like to store things in the office. They like to store their office coffee mugs. They got their favorite little plant there. They like to, have their files very available. And so those are questions that are real. I could be really hardline about it. So for me, it was not overnight. I had to spend time on it. But I want to also tell them the opportunity to be more productive. And I think most people know, Derek, that they're without the commute, they've just won themselves half an hour to 2 hours of extra work time, right? If people talk about work-life balance for this generation is important, it doesn't get better than that. On the flip side, though, just people can get overworked. And I know a lot of mothers who have to be a mom, who have to be a business executive, who has to be a wife, and who has to clean the house. 4 roles in one. And when they go to the office, physically, they are able to at least partly compartmentalize their lives. So we have to be sensitive to those things.
Yeah, thanks for that. I have an anonymous question here, Carl. How do we ensure that people are actually working and not just having really long lunches or just slacking off?
Super, super good question. Organizational maturity. I have my opinion, my answers, and I have done research on this. Organizational maturity and professional maturity are the 2 words that I would look at, right? In some cases, it will be quite difficult to have 100% understanding. But if you look at your organization and the organization already has a good relational rhythm, you can take this, then you know the level of professionalism and the organization is able to do that. But some organizations are very young, like a startup. It's very hard to build culture, whatever that culture is, in a startup when everybody's virtual on different time zones. So that's why a hybrid model. I don't think a virtual leadership is about never meeting anybody. It's about you still need to have that face-to-face coffee time, have a cappuccino, and engage and be intentional when you have that face-to-face. Not to pull out your notebook or your iPad and talk business, but speak into people's lives. Work is about collaborating, working together, and if you're leaders, I would suggest that part of your responsibility as leaders is to be able to speak into your team members' lives and have them speak into your lives and grow together. Grow together as professionally and as an organization. But you don't know. Of course, people are suspicious, right? People just send me a Slack message. How come I haven't responded? It's been 3 hours. I would like to suggest one of the values is give people the benefit of doubt, right? But if they abuse it, you know what, Derek? You will know. Actually, they will know, right? But it depends on the maturity, professional maturity, as well as organizational maturity. That's the 2 indicators that I look at.
Great. Another anonymous question here. The slide on directive versus supportive was very interesting. How do you know when to use one or the other, or do you use a combination of the 2?
Great question. I'll give you the 30-second synopsis. Well, the first synopsis is it depends. And the next question is, what does it depend on? It depends on 2 things. That situation or that task that's at hand, and also that person's skill set. In a very most simplistic way, it's more complex, and it does take 2 days to deep dive into that diagnostic framework, but it depends on that individual's capability or capacity in some cases, and the task that's required. Somebody is a world-class presenter who can speak and he's got a capability, but don't assume that presentation skill means that they can develop the presentation, they know how to use PowerPoint, they can put graphics together, and they can put a good storyboard together. Those are 3 different skill sets. One is oratory, one is design, and one is storytelling, right? 3 different skill sets. So in general, what you want to do is you want to break down that situation and the skill that's required. And then you can say, all right, in this situation, let me be a little bit more directive. This is how you do it. You can't show people how to, cook fried rice if they've never seen a wok. And right. So you really have to be able to be directive there. But a supportive role is where you are a little bit more coaching and a little bit more inquisitive and Socratic, using good questioning skills.
Great. A few more questions, maybe one more. There are some older generation members of the staff who are not tech savvy. How do we approach these type of staff?
I used to think that that's a good argument, but I would like to say that I no longer accept that, honestly. My mother is on Zoom. I mean, come on, she's 77-year-old, right? She misses her grandkids. She's got 9 grandkids, and she was really frustrated during COVID-19. So we just gave her a link, press that link, right? And she got on Zoom. Now, if you're 85-year-old and you don't know how to use Zoom for work, my suggestion is you should be retiring. You should be enjoying that golf game. Right. So I don't think being undigital is optional. The question is it how well versed are you to be able to use the digital tools that's available and integrate it? Having said that, you got to be sensitive. You don't want to overwhelm your team. You have to phase it in.
Great. I think that's all for the questions, callers. Any kind of closing comments that you would like to make as we close this webinar?
I do have an important question. It's Friday afternoon. Have a glass of wine if you want.
All right. So Denise, can you put back up just the call to action? Once again, we want to remind everyone that there's a number of different workshops that Carl has mentioned that Blanchard Singapore will be hosting. You could either register directly, or if you want to discuss any of these in detail, we would love to have a call with you or email back and forth, and we can give you any of the information that you need here. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you have any interest, or if you want more clarification on any of these programs coming up. These are the 2 public workshops, as well as SL2 coming up in May. So again, these are all tackling different aspects of leadership, and we hope that we would be able to partner with you and your organization for whatever your leadership needs are. So once again, we want to thank Carl for his webinar on leading virtually, and we want to say thank you for attending this webinar. Have a wonderful weekend, and we want to say thank you, and you'll be hearing from us in the near future. Carl, once again, thank you. Everyone else, have a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.